consultants, but also following up with the leads ourselves. So we are certainly experts at the process. So I'm very excited today to share with you some of the things that we've learned and some of the things that we do. I've asked in the past, and I'll ask again this time. I have no need to preach for 45 minutes. If there's any reason that you have a question, or hopefully you do have some questions as we go along, I would encourage you to kind of type the questions in the question box, and hopefully we can get interrupted, and we will answer them in due time. Or if not, I will certainly not take the full hour to speak on just simply here, and we'll take some questions at the end, and hopefully we can do any clarifying. Additionally, I'll give you my email address at the end, so if you have any questions that way, we can follow up as well. As you know, we're doing this to kind of help you guys and your franchises be as effective at lead generation and lead follow-up as possible, so I want to make sure I can be as useful as possible. All right, let's get started. A brief introduction, who I am. There's this picture of me up in the upper right-hand corner. I studied accounting and legal studies at Wharton as an undergraduate, so if you hear me talk a lot about numbers, you're often, it's just in my background, and as we talk about lead follow-up, numbers are going to play a big part. Used to be a management consultant at a company called the Monitor Group, and now I serve as the COO of Franchise Health's parent company, Metric Collective. Formerly, I was the GM of Franchise Health and worked in the marketing team, so quite a bit of experiences working with these types of issues, and like I said, I've spent the last almost 3 years working on it now, so it's great. What is this webinar? So I was approached a number of months ago, man, it was almost a year ago, asking if Franchise Health would do a series of webinars on kind of what we know about lead generation, lead follow-up, and I'm happy to report that we have made it to the end. I've really enjoyed doing these. But back in December, we kind of did an overview of lead generation with regard to the internet and how it works. In February, we started with internet advertising and kind of how do we use all the different sources of traffic out there to drive traffic to your site. In April, a couple months ago, we talked about franchise websites, what they should look like, how they should work, a lot about lead forms, a lot about actually capturing contact information about selling your franchise. So that was a very good presentation, and now kind of closing the loop, the final thing is following up with leads. I'm pretty sure these things are recorded somewhere, so if you haven't had a chance to check out the earlier ones, I certainly encourage you to do so. And don't know if they send a survey out or anything like that, but maybe I'll get invited back to do the sequence again at some point. But all right, let's dive into it. For those of you who have been on one of my webinars before, you'll notice that the first half of the slideshow is always the same. And I start talking about the Franchise Health Lead Generation Resource Center. So back in October of 2014, we basically started writing this blog. And essentially what we realized was there wasn't a lot of good information available for franchises with regard to how lead generation works. A lot of people who have been in the franchise industry for a long time know that, okay, there's maybe these places called portals, there's these websites that do lead generation. I think I do lead generation, but there was no attempt to try to codify all the knowledge around it. The fact of the matter is our company wants to be as transparent as we possibly can. We want to lead the industry in terms of kind of educating everybody out there about what lead generation is and how it works, and lead follow-up certainly is part of the lead generation process. You can see kind of why we did it in the vision there on the left side. On the bottom of every single slide, you'll notice a URL, franchisehealth.com/franchise-lead-generation. Everything that I'm going to talk about today is located in the Lead Generation Resource Center, and everything that I've spoken about in previous webinars is there as well. We post things very regularly here, and ultimately what we want to do is keep you guys informed, especially when it comes to the internet. Lead generation is incredibly dynamic, and simply 2 years ago what lead generation meant when we started this thing is very different than what lead generation means today. There's kind of a fallacy that you can get involved in to think that, okay, once I figure it out, I'm done, I've made it, I've done it, my franchise is okay. The fact of the matter is, with the digital revolution, it just unfortunately doesn't work that way. So things change very, very quickly. Hopefully, we have a comment box and would love any suggestions of topics for us to cover. We have a big team over here at Franchise Health that loves putting these things together. We have tons of data and information that we're more than happy to share with you guys. So please check it out, bookmark it. We really do appreciate when people are interested in hearing how lead gen works. Okay, so you know, when I first started this, it was very difficult for me to kind of put a framework on what exactly lead generation was. We spent a number of weeks and months batting this around, but ultimately we kind of came to the 4 steps of franchise lead generation. Like I said, if you guys have listened to one of my webinars before, you'll know that this slide is very similar to what you've seen, but it's very important, I think, to bear repeating. So essentially, we look at lead generation in 4 steps, and I talk about it here with regards to the internet, but frankly, it's lead generation offline as well. So number 1, acquiring traffic. How do you cost-effectively drive high-intent web traffic to your website? So how do you actually get people to come? This is Google, this is Facebook, this is SEO, this is all sort of other social networking, any sort of banner ads, you name it, putting collateral in your stores. You got to acquire traffic all sorts of different ways. Secondly, once they get there, how do we actually turn the visitors into leads? So most of the time we talk about filling out a contact form, but there's all sorts of other clever things you can do. Just because somebody visits your website, that doesn't mean that you're actually going to be able to turn them into a lead, and there's a whole lot of different strategies to do that. Number 3, and what we're going to be focusing on today, is turning leads into candidates. So how do we actually communicate with leads? Once we have that contact information, what do we do next? And for those of you who have interacted with lead generators before, you'll know that we're absolutely obsessed with this. The Franchise Help ourselves handle step 1 and 2 as a service for franchises, but we don't really have the visibility and the ability to do step 3, we'll say yet, for brands and consultants. So this is kind of where you guys, especially if you use external generators, kind of the magnifying glass is there. And then step 4, which we don't really cover, is turning brand candidates into franchisees, how do we close the deal. Every time we've ever done research into kind of how this is done, it turns out that the brand, yourselves, are likely way better at this than we ever are. There's certainly applications of technology in this space, but I would hate to pretend to give a webinar on this because it's not nearly our expertise. We're technology people. So today, like I said, we're going to be focusing on step 3, turning leads into candidates, and I try to distill everything that we do from a webinar perspective down to a single question. And today, I want to focus on this kind of very high-level thing. How do you get in contact with people? One of the ways I could take this webinar that I'm not going to is once you get in contact with people, what do you say? That type of nuance is going to be very, very specific to the franchises that you are promoting, your franchise, or if you're a consultant promoting multiple franchises. So I'm going to do my best today to focus exclusively on kind of just how you get in contact with people. There are all sorts of tools that are available. We get quoted back to us this crazy statistic, which all sorts of different feelings about it, called contact rate. We don't necessarily like it, but you guys really have a keen interest in what you tell us in maximizing your contact rate. So for however many leads you generate, you want to actually get in contact with a majority of these people, or as many as you can. We understand that. Contact can be a whole lot of different things. I mean, at the subtlest level, you might find contact as someone just opening an email. You can consider that a contact. I don't want to dig into the specifics of how you want to track this. Each of you probably has your own feelings, and if there's questions at the end about what you call a contact and all that kind of stuff, I'm more than happy to answer it. But just in general, as we go through this today, I kind of want you guys to be asking yourself, how do we get in contact with people? I found that as people listen to these webinars and kind of walk through this thing, the easiest thing for you guys to do to kind of get the most out of it is just keep your franchise or your consulting firm's process in mind. And if you keep asking yourself this question, how do we get in contact with people? How do we get in contact with people? You'll find that you can be very thoughtful about this, and you're probably actually doing a lot of the things I'm going to talk about already today. But hopefully, I can just provide a little framework so it kind of makes it a little bit more concrete. Okay, enough of the slides that you see in every webinar. Let's get started on the unique stuff in step number 3. Okay, so before we get going, I want to cover 2 key concepts. And if there is anything that you take away from today's presentation, I really want it to be these two things. I'm going to talk about the nuances of it a little bit later, but these are the biggest and most important things, and frankly, the things that I think people get the most wrong in the industry. So let's start on the left. So your franchise's funnel, apologies for the very simple graphics, but your franchise's funnel. So, you know, at the top, you have these leads. Depending on what kind of franchise you are or how big your franchise is, the leads could be tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. We worked with a client recently where the number of leads that they were working in the hundreds of thousands. You have all of these pieces of contact information that are added to the top. And at the bottom of the funnel, for almost everybody on this call, we have a close. Right? So those two parts of the funnel are absolutely set in stone, I think, for the most part. So my question is kind of, what does the middle look like, right? How do people get from leads, being leads, to closes? The people that we talk to that seem to be the most sophisticated in the industry, it is a very methodical process, right? It's this, it's that. Doesn't mean you can't skip steps, but it's a very clear-cut idea of you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that, and then you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that, all the way down to close. Some of the things that you hear in these steps, there's binders, there's discovery days, there's applications, there's warm calls, cold calls, all this kind of stuff. I don't want to get into what your franchise's funnel actually is, but the two things I want to ask of you, an easy one and a hard one. The easy one is this: just be able to tell people what your franchise's funnel is, right? If somebody says, hey, how do you move people through your funnel? Don't be the person that responds, I sell franchises, I get closes. Really do your best to think about, okay, actually, how are we moving people through? That's the easy one. The hard one is, and I dropped the word there in the lower left corner, is quantification. Can you actually quantify for me or for someone kind of how the different steps, how there's drop-off in the different steps? So if you start with 100 leads, right? How many people do you get in contact with? How many people do you have a good conversation with? How many people do you get to take a webinar? How many people? And as you get smarter and smarter about quantifying that process, I think you'll find that all the things that I talk about of keeping track of people, they're going to fall right into place. But without that quantification, all the different levers and options that you have to pull in terms of what your franchise's funnel are, you're not going to really know whether or not they're working. And so that's unfortunate and kind of can stand in the way of you succeeding. The second thing, and you'll see on the right side, is what I call real costs. And this one's very difficult because oftentimes people love, especially when they talk to us, they love citing us hard costs, right? So I pay X dollars for a lead, I buy this many leads, therefore I spend this much money. I spent this much money on LinkedIn advertising. I spent, this is the amount of money that I have to pay to a broker if they recommend a franchise to me. Hard costs, very, very important. I certainly do not lose track of them. Like I said, as an accounting major myself, I do my best to keep track of all the hard costs that we have. But I'm going to challenge everybody to think about soft costs as well. Everybody on this call's time is very valuable. And if you employ people, if you work for a boss, their time is very valuable as well. So each of these lead follow-up processes takes a variety of level of expertise, a variety of level of time, the level to which that they are optimizable and sustainable on their own and just kind of set it and forget it is very, very different. So when you are evaluating your lead follow-up process, the extent to which you can allocate the actual hard and soft costs to your franchise's funnel, you're going to be much happier. We find that the people who do lead generation best are the ones who really get this, right? It's, I'm not going to say anything that you guys don't already know, but lead generation is expensive, right? And even if the actual hard cost that you're outlaying to generate the leads is not high, then you probably did it because you hired a whole bunch of people, and so your labor costs are going to be higher, or you've invested in a bunch of technology, so your R&D costs are going to be higher. Do your best to think about this as we go through this. Okay, this is the slide. I think that for the most of you, I don't necessarily make formal recommendations all the time because I think every franchise is a little bit different. I'm going to call this your toolkit. So what you see on the left-hand side of the screen is what I would call the major options that you have with regard to getting in contact with leads. It's certainly not exhaustive. You probably don't do all of them. You probably do other things as well, but in the research that we've done, these seem to kind of make up what your biggest options are. So we'll kind of go down them one by one very quickly, just give you an idea of kind of how I consider these. As we go down the list, I'm going to posit that the likelihood that your franchise should be using these goes down. So at the top, you're talking about things that if I hear that your franchise or your consultant as a consultant you're not using, I'm going to be stunned, and we absolutely need to be doing them immediately. As we go down, they certainly are options that you have, and you may find that you should be doing them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to. I wish I had a smarter way to quantify these, and I probably should go back and write a Lead Generation Resource Center article about it, but I'm going to say based on how effective each of these are, what the cost is, and the effort level, kind of thinking about those real costs of each of these. So the first three that you see up there are are all email, excuse me. And if you've heard one of my webinars on email before, you'll hear me say email is free. This is not exactly true, because when you look at the cost, there is a nominal cost to send an email, but there's also a soft cost associated with writing it. But in the grand scheme of things, email is relatively free. Things like email autoresponders and email drifts are things that you spend an hour, maybe 90 minutes setting up, and then they are effective kind of into perpetuity, and they do it themselves. So even if the effectiveness, you might not think the effectiveness of an email autoresponder is that high, but you can literally spend 60 minutes communicating with, and like I mentioned the other franchise, hundreds of thousands of people, right? And it can just take you 60 minutes to do it. So I'm a big email evangelist. I will talk about email probably as long as I'm in the tech industry. Personalized emails are at the bottom of the three emails that you see there. Personalized emails do take a little bit more time. I do recommend some sort of templating. So you could say, okay, if somebody responds this way, then do this. There's an old school merge tag, so you can put insert first name or insert states or whatever you know about them. Personalized emails are big, right? Everybody knows the difference between receiving an email that you know is marketing and an email that you know that somebody actually wrote you. If you guys do have the time to communicate with people from a personalized basis, or in technology enables a simulated personalized basis that is relatively time effective, that's certainly cost effective, and like I said, very repeatable. So you should go with that. If you are not doing email, anything else that you see here is probably a little bit moot. I know probably the majority of you who are listening in are email people, so that's not the most shocking thing in the world, but I want to make sure on all three of these things, you're thinking about autoresponders, you're thinking about drifts, and you're thinking about personalized emails. Cold calls. So cold calls, what's great about them is you can do them all the time. You can do them on your schedule, and you can kind of just roll through it. So you can imagine a situation where you have hundreds of leads. Just put an hour on your calendar and you just start dialing. A lot of people think cold calling might be dead, and there's certainly a lot of studies out there about how the effectiveness of cold calling has gone down. But like I said, it works. You get there, you start dialing, you dial, and eventually you're going to get somebody on the phone. It's not, it can be a bit of a maddening exercise to do cold calls. But ultimately, if you have these leads and they've put their information, and you need to be calling them, and I'm going to call a cold call anything where you do not have a license to call them in and above simply them having entered their phone number. So you haven't scheduled anything with them. You've simply decided that they're going to call, or that you're going to call them. Social networking. So this one's interesting. I know I've moved this around a lot. Connect with people. Connect with people on LinkedIn. Connect with people on Facebook. Message them through LinkedIn. Share things with them, especially as the franchises get higher and higher in terms of investment. Tools like social networking do a good job at kind of proving credibility. You want to lead them to your brand kind of as much as you can. So yeah, if you have time, a lead comes in immediately. Connect them on LinkedIn and connect and start chatting with them through LinkedIn message. I think it's follow them on Twitter, whatever it may be. But I think you're going to be very happy with that kind of decision. Like I said, pretty quick. Text messaging. Okay, so this text messaging is kind of the one may argue that the cutting edge of what's on your toolkit. For those of you who are followers of Franchise Health and followers of Lead Generation Resource Center, you will know that we are big fans of text messaging. Now, I have it way down the list for a couple reasons. Number one, your ability to execute text messaging correctly is going to a lot have to do with your kind of tech savviness. For those of you who have a lot of experience in technology and you've done it, be it at this job or another job, the tools and products that are available for enterprise-level text messaging are there. Setting them up can be tough, and frankly, compliance can be tough as well. I'll talk to you a little bit about kind of the text messaging service we use. But if you do not consider yourself a tech-savvy person, getting into the text messaging game is difficult. And I don't want to pretend that you can kind of push a button and start text messaging people on a massive basis. Text message automation does exist. People do not like being communicated via text message in an automated fashion. Those are things like your bank sends you an automated text with a confirmation code. Text messaging is still a very interpersonal form of communication, so you want to make sure that you have the time to actually text people personally. The last thing about text messaging to keep in mind, text messaging from a compliance perspective, from a legal perspective, you really want to make sure that you actually do have the proper license to do this. Opting in text messaging on the internet is something that's very new and very important, and you want to make sure that before you start text messaging someone that you actually have their permission. There's all sorts of, for those of you who are big readers, I recommend thumbing through the TCPA compliance documents. Text messaging is starting to receive a lot of noise because people care a lot about it, kind of like email spam was maybe about a decade ago. So I just want to make sure that you have permission to do it. But assuming all those three things are there, the effectiveness of text messaging is outrageous. I didn't put any of the numbers in here, but we've seen text message effectiveness in some situations be 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times more effective than calling. Frankly, people just prefer to do it. If any of your phones were to ring, cell phones were to ring right now, and there was a phone number that you did not recognize, I would argue that the odds that you picked up the phone were fairly low. I see it all the time. People, I don't know this number, hang up. And maybe they leave a voicemail, maybe they don't. People don't like voicemails. Text messages, 100% open rate. People read the text messages. Maybe it's 98% open rate. People read them, and if nothing else, to kind of give them the opportunity to respond on their own accord. So very effective, but cost and effort can be pretty high. Warm calls. People are used to seeing, I think in some situations, warm calls below cold calls. The reason I put warm calls down here is warm calls rely on some other form of communication, right? You can't just warm call someone. So warm calls likely are preceded by emails. Perhaps they're preceded by cold calls. Perhaps they're preceded by social networking or text messaging. So for someone to say that our strategy exclusively revolves around warm calling, so that would be scheduling a time and ultimately, making contact with someone, it relies on these other things. You can't just do that. And someone who's not able to then kind of show you how they do the warm calls and how they actually set them up, they'll probably find, you'll find that they're doing these other things. So I put it down here at the bottom because I think that while it's effective and you're going to have the highest conversion rate and everybody likes them the most, you got to do these other things before warm calls can actually exist. For those of you who have experienced cold calling, it's possible that the most common outcome is actually scheduling a warm call. Hey, when are you available? Actually, are you available to talk right now? No, give me a call on Thursday. Okay, great. And you just turned a cold call into ultimately a warm call. So really think they are effective, but you need other things to kind of make them happy. And then the last one, and for those of you who know me, unsurprising to see at the bottom, is direct mail. There are some franchises out there that swear by it. I'm sure it is fantastic for those of you who have perfected it. We're talking about the generating leads online. So when you generate leads online, taking the experience offline immediately and saying we're going to be mailing you something isn't necessarily what people are going for. Like I said, I'm not going to argue that it's impossible to make a direct mail lead follow-up strategy work. However, from a cost-effectiveness perspective and effort, if you don't have one, I'm not going to recommend that you ever kind of go down that route.
Eli, in the question box, David Silver spoke about this a little bit. He says sometimes a prospect that has received a few drip and personal emails and voicemails, but all of a sudden they finally respond to a text. And then he says also I use a program that notifies me whenever someone opens an email, and calling them right after has also been effective.
Oh, certainly. So the level of technology that's available in terms of data and information is outrageous. So, I'll kind of describe to you these tools that we use here in a second, but knowledge is power, right? So to your second point about kind of using a call strategy on the back of an email open is an unbelievably savvy decision. That's the kind of thing where, okay, here's one additional piece of information. Simply with this extra piece of information, I can find that my contact rate goes way up. On the text message thing, after doing these other pieces of communication, there is all sorts of analysis you can do about the interaction of all of these different tools. You can say, okay, I want to do this, this, and this, and then I'm going to hit them with this, and you find that whatever it may be. I'll show you in a minute kind of what we have, the company line, if you would, about how we think about this. Interaction effects between all the different tools are certainly important. I would call that maybe lead follow-up 201 instead of lead follow-up 101. So certainly important to keep track of that stuff. However, I don't know if you're going to get as much of the learnings out of it at the beginning as possible. So I want to talk a little bit, and thank you very much for the comment. I appreciate the positive reinforcement. As far as the tools we use, so you can see a couple, 3 different logos over here. I'll talk about email first, but you guys may have heard Twilio and MailChimp. You certainly haven't heard of FranFunnel, and understand that. So we designed, here at Franchise Help, have designed our own internal system for lead follow-up. So as I had mentioned to you guys before, we do lots of emailing, lots of text messaging, lots of phone calling, lots of social networking. We're following up with the leads who come through our system all the time. So over the course of the last few years, we have basically been developing a system in-house to do this. We use it ourselves, and we are just now beginning to actually bring that to other people, to franchises, to consultants who are interested kind of in that type of call, text, email technology. It is going to be, it'll probably hit the market, if you would, in a couple of months. We have a website you can check out, but we ourselves are working on a solution that you guys are going to be able to use and kind of tap into all the tech knowledge that we have here. So I want to put that out there. It's a brief plug for what we're working on, and certainly can check out. We'll start to publish some cool stuff about how we're thinking about this problem, and hopefully you guys will be beta testers or find out the most useful solution. But in the instance that your franchise is not a FranFunnel user, and like I said, FranFunnel hasn't hit the market yet, kind of 2 tools that we would recommend for you guys to think about. So let's talk about email. So the 2 main email providers that you're going to hear out there are Constant Contact and MailChimp. We happen to be MailChimp people. We really like it. I think the interface is very easy to use. The types of statistics that it gives you is all right. The automation technology is okay. It's certainly not an email automation platform. They're probably moving that way, but it isn't now. But MailChimp, to the extent, like I said, email being at the top of the list in your toolkit, MailChimp makes it really, really easy. I recommend it because I think it does a good job organizing all your information, and it doesn't replace a CRM, but there is a way for you to store all your contact information in there and frankly, track all the things that you need to. I recommend signing up for it. You can get a free account. You can just look at it, play around. Maybe you siphon off a certain percentage of leads you have it, give it a shot. It works. I mean, we're sending to an extent of, in some cases, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of emails a day through MailChimp. It's very, very good for those types of blasts, and like I said, has some automation capability. So it is our recommendation. I hope someone from MailChimp is on the phone listening to this, and maybe you want to give us a slight discount on what we pay. But it is fairly inexpensive, and I think you guys would really like it. Calls and text messages are tougher. And for those of you who have kind of looked into voice over IP technology or call center technology or text messaging, you'll know that there's a whole lot of people, a whole lot of different services that do this. We use a service called Twilio. I believe it actually went public very recently. But Twilio is a service that allows you to kind of send emails, calls, text messages using API technology and actually doing it from a computerized basis. If you are working these leads yourself, if you do not have the support of any sort of technology department, you're not going to want to use Twilio. It is a very powerful tool, but one that requires a lot of technical expertise. If you do have that type of that available to you, I highly, highly, highly recommend Twilio in that it just gives you the types of flexibility that you want. You can basically tell it to call people at certain times, tell it to text people at certain times, and it's very, very flexible. So as you decide what your call text strategy is going to be, you can kind of use this platform to do it. Now, if you don't have the tech expertise, there are tons and tons of services available to you. What I recommend doing is signing up for them, using them very briefly, and when you find out what call and text message strategy works best for you, which could take days, it could take months, it could take years, I don't know, then investing the technology in using Twilio. As I said, back to the toolkit, email is so much easier to do. It's so quick. So I'm going to recommend, MailChimp, you can literally log on and start sending emails today. Something like Twilio for calls and text messages, it just takes longer. It's an investment. So I just want to hammer home that this is where the soft costs come in, right? This is where it takes more coordination, more R&D. And it's something to keep in mind. You can't just snap your fingers and start calling and text messaging people. For email, it's pretty close to that. I will say, once you do get the technology up and running, Twilio is relatively inexpensive. I think it's under a penny for both each phone call and each text, so not that bad. Okay, about the follow-up timeline. So I talked to you, earlier that the things I want you to take away are definitely that the funnel and the hard and soft costs. But I want to kind of put out, Franchise Help's opinion on the follow-up timeline, and the number of things you can read about it is basically unlimited. So I encourage you to read as much as you can. But here's our opinion, and many of my coworkers are on the line. I hope you would agree with me. So there's a reason I highlight what's on the left, and you're going to hear me say it over and over and over again. The number one thing in lead generation is immediate follow-up. You have to follow up immediately, and when I say immediately, I mean immediately. When that lead comes into your system, that's why the email autoresponder is so important. You need to be calling as quickly as you possibly can. I'm literally talking about calling within the minute. Now, doing this takes resources. You need people. You need the ability to kind of have places staffed. I understand why it's unreasonable to expect that every lead can be followed up with immediately. If you invest anywhere after this call and after thinking about your follow-up, I'm highlighting it yellow, I'm bolding it. Invest in your immediate follow-up. Immediate. Lead generation needs to be seamless, needs to feel seamless for the people that are there. Conversion rates are outrageously high in the first minute after submission. So we're talking they enter their contact information, you hop on the phone, your contact rate with them is going to skyrocket in that first minute because they think you're calling them immediately. I understand, difficult to do. Right? You're talking about staffing things. In some cases, leads come in overnight. I'm not saying you need to have a call center in the Philippines that does this, but think about this. Immediate follow-up. There's a reason I use the term maximum effort. I almost don't want to cover the other things in the timeline because of how important immediate follow-up is. It really is everything in this game. As we move to the left, or excuse me, as we move to the right, things get a little bit less important, but up to 48 hours, immediate is not always possible, so you need to say, okay, if I can't do it immediately, let's say it comes in at night, a weekend, whatever it may be, we got to do what we can because that's kind of the golden time, right? So this is calling, text messaging, emailing. And, for those of you who are basketball fans, you still have the full court press on. This is when people are the most interested. This is when people are kind of the hottest, and we have to do everything we can in that 2 days to get them. If we don't get them in 2 days, once again, the question we're asking ourselves is how do we get in contact with people? We kind of have these other two segments. So we have the 48 hours to 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, we really see drop-offs, but in that 2 days to 3 weeks, you still see conversion rates be relatively high. I mean, honestly, you guys know this. People are busy. Sometimes hard to get a hold of them in the first 2 days. But think about the medium effort. You see the word there under effort in 48 hours to 3 weeks, cadence. Right, so cadence is a lot about thinking about, all right, what do we want the flow to be? A pattern, something that's repeatable. It's calls and emails, maybe it's text messages. I don't know, at that point, it's bothering for somebody if they're not answering. You still see okay conversion rates kind of up to that 3 week mark. Nowhere near the conversion rates that you see immediately, and nowhere near the conversion rates you see in the first 2 days, but you still have a shot. To the extent that you have the ability to work leads that are a little bit older, we kind of think about that 2 days to 3 weeks time frame. As where you want to spend time. And then the 3 weeks plus, this is where email is kind of the dream, right? You can continue being in contact with people, even if they've never got a hold with you. You can do it into perpetuity as long as you have the proper unsubscribe stuff. You're not going to bother anybody. I would just say email, 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 email. That doesn't mean 4 times a day, but there's no reason to ever take anybody off a drip. There's no reason to ever stop bothering is not the right word, communicating with someone. Some of them will raise their hand. Right? They'll say, there'll be months, and we have stories here of people who we try to get in contact with over and over and over and over again, never heard from them, and then one day we send them an email, and they're like, oh, hey, I'm ready to talk. Like, well, what happened to the other 50 things we did to try to get a hold of you? But that's kind of how it works sometimes. But don't want to bury the lead here. Immediately. Now, how do I know this? So I want to share with you some information of a study that was run by a company called Philosophy, basically looking at lead generation across every industry that they have. So on the graph you see on the left is the improvement of lead conversion rate based on how long it takes you to get a hold of someone, right? So the improvement in conversion rate in 1 minute is 400%. 400% better in conversion rate when you get a contact with them in a minute. Look what happens at 2 minutes. So we're talking it takes you 2 minutes to get a hold of someone, and it drops by more than half. Right? You're to 160%. That enough should be such a mind-blowing data point to you that should convince you, okay, I have to invest in that first minute. Just waiting an extra minute does work. 40% is effective at that point. 3 minutes down again, 30 minutes down again. Now, as you see, the rate at which they go down after that first minute is much lower, so you still see an increase in conversion rate in 24 hours, right? So you want to get in that first day. But look at the difference in magnitude here, right? I want to prove to you as much as I can that I am serious, right? That it really is an instant thing. For those of you who are in charge of development, if you are able to succeed at instant contact, you will be a successful person, period, at the end. Now, it's difficult. I understand that. But please keep in mind this graph as we think about this stuff. Number of call attempts to make initial contact. So some of you guys, we talk about how many times should you call someone. So Philosophy, they did the study. To get to, it takes up to six calls to get to kind of 93%, right? So of the people you're going to get a hold of, sometimes you need to make call after call after call after call. As you see, maybe 1 call, you get 48% of the people, 2 calls, 70%, but you're still making progress. So don't stop calling, right? As I said, and some of you may have been surprised to see it, cold calls are fairly high up my list on the toolkit. I want you to keep this in mind, that you got to call once, you got to call twice, you got to call 3 times. You can't call infinite times, right? It takes resources, but man, up to 6 times, and you're still seeing a pretty good improvement, right? An additional 3% of people answering the call between the 5th and the 6th call, which is very impressive. The last graph that I want to go ahead.
Sorry, David wants to know, how do you feel about CallandLee? It's a program that allows him to send links for an initial conversation. You know what that is?
Yeah, I know CallandLee very well. We certainly use it. So for those of you, go back to the toolkit here. CallandLee is a tool that allows people to schedule time on your calendar. So essentially what you do is you send an email to someone and you say, hey, I'm more than happy to talk to you. Please let me know when you're available, and click this link to schedule something. That sits on top of whatever calendaring technology that you have. So let's say you have Outlook, or you have Google Calendar, or Apple Calendar, or whatever it may be. It goes and reads your calendar, and then gives them all these times. So converting from an email to a warm call, CallandLee does a very effective job, and it's relatively cost-effective in doing so. 2 notes about CallandLee, just to keep in mind, because it is a very good piece of technology. It is not the best piece of technology. Number 1, you still have to have a successful email strategy. You can't, you're still, without the email part of it, CallandLee doesn't really work out. A lot of people kind of don't really think about the email side of CallandLee. They just kind of email out a link, find the time, whatever it may be. You need to be a good emailer if you want CallandLee to work. Second of all, just because you schedule time with someone on CallandLee doesn't necessarily make sure that they're going to be available at that time. So we know story after story every year, oh yeah, I'm ready for my 2 p.m. call with some person I've never talked to before. I get all excited, 2 p.m. shows up, you call them, and they're not available. So finding a way to continually warn that person between when they schedule the Calendly and when the time is actually ready. And so you may use text messaging there, you may use social networking there, you may use email, like, hey, I just want to let you know how excited I am for our phone call, whatever it may be. Calendly may send them an email reminder. That's an incredibly impersonal form of communication. It's simply a reminder, right? It's not actually moving people farther. So love Calendly, very powerful. We certainly use it, but it is only enabled by other decisions that you are making, and I think that's important to keep in mind.
Eli, we also have a hand raised. Brooke, did you have a question? I've unmuted you if you'd like to speak. Okay, I don't know if she's there anymore. Brooke, if you have the question, you can put it in the question box. All right, go on ahead, Eli.
Sure. A couple more slides, and I'll open it up for questions to everybody. Just wanted to share this last thing from Velocify. So Velocify took all this data, and they said, okay, well, so then what is the ultimate contact strategy? And what you see here is kind of a combination of phone calls and emails that they said, okay, if everybody in the world could do this, we believe it would be the most cost-effective way to maximize lead conversion. So you see on day one, which is the left, we talk about is that 0 minutes you're going to call. So between 0 and 1 minute, you're going to make a phone call. 20 minutes in, you send the first email. 30 minutes in, you make the second phone call. 1 hour in, you make the third phone call. So as you can see, back to this importance of the immediacy of this, we are in the full court press mode right then, right there, right then, right there. Got to do it. As you move up to, we're moving out of the 48, out of the immediate, out of the 2-day into more of the slower. 4 days in, send an email. 5 days in, make a call. 8 days in, send an email. 14 days in, send a call. Make a call. 15 days in, do both. 22 days in, do whatever. I'm using this not because I want to recommend this to you guys, but I want you to see kind of how involved this is, right? This is the ultimate contact strategy from a data perspective. There is a reason that everybody on this phone call or listening right now cannot do this. And I am not advocating to anybody to go invest in doing this. However, as illustratively, this is what it looks like, right? You're talking about 3 calls within the first 2 hours, an email 20 minutes in, 4 more emails within 22 days, 3 more calls, right? The organization, the investment, et cetera, necessary to do all this is very high. You may use this to kind of look at how how does mine stack up against this? Am I doing as much? Am I varying the types of communication? But just wanted to share that with you guys. So what does it all mean, right? Why do I care so much about this? For those of you who don't know what it sounds like on the phone, but I get pretty worked up when we talk about lead working. So we finally, we've heard a lot of what lead working complaints about it, right? Complaints about lead generation, complaints about that. So we've kind of feel like a lead follow-up vigilante. We've decided to take matters into our own hands. So earlier this summer, one of the interns here at Franchise Alpha, a guy who's here for the summer working with us, just came up with the idea, okay, what if we start sending, and I'll call them tracer leads, into our advertisers' systems? What if we send leads that appear to be real and try to figure out when we are seeing breakdowns in the contact process? We've never really done anything like this. We trust our clients, so we start to do this. And 3 weeks into this thing, I cannot tell you how mind-blowing we're starting to see these results. So the median email delay is 5 minutes. And I don't want to share the average because there's some people that take days and days and days, but that means it's kind of surprising, right? Only half of the people that we have tried send an email in under 5 minutes. The other 50% of our clients are taking over 5 minutes to send an email, which is shocking. Now, if you go back to the ultimate contact strategy, it tells you to wait 20 minutes before sending an email, but they're also making a call before that email is sent. So it's not necessarily they're only waiting for email because they're calling, but 50% of people waiting over 5 minutes, knowing that email autoresponder and email drip technology exists, that was eye-opening. But the next 2 stats are really the things that I want people to take away. The median first call delays, the time between us putting the information into our client systems and getting the first call from them is 21 hours, right? So I'm telling you, you have 1 minute to call, and the 50th percentile takes 21 hours to make a phone call. So going back to this, you're talking, you're looking at this time elapsed thing on the right. You're talking about giving up hundreds and hundreds of percentages of conversion rate by making a decision to call 21 hours later. let's not forget that that means that 50% of people are taking longer than 21 hours to call. They're taking over a day to make impersonal communication or attempt to make impersonal communication with leads. The second call delay, over 4 days. We're seeing at the 50th percentile, a 4-day delay between when you're getting your first call and your second call. According to the ultimate contact strategy, according to everything you will ever read in every piece of advice that somebody gives you, this says it should be approximately 1 hour between call 1 and call 2. We're looking at 4 days. The text delay, just the idea, is 20 hours. Text message is a little bit newer. Hold it to lower standards. That should probably be shorter as well. But this is the big thing, right? And let's just assume that everybody up here is at the 50%. I know some of you are going to be better, some of you are going to be worse. When you have a lead follow-up program that looks something like this, the odds that you end up getting in contact with somebody and the odds that your lead generation program is successful go down so much, right? So much that you are hamstringing yourself in a way that you don't even realize. And we are going to work with all of our clients to kind of get better. And like I said, we're going to develop this brand funnel technology and kind of bring it to market for you guys. But I think it's important, and the reason we consider working leads still as part of lead generation is that it is, right? If you generate leads, but you're working them in this kind of speed and this kind of manner, it really is not going to work very well, right? People give you their contact information, they're excited, they're energetic, okay, I'm ready for this. And then it takes a whole day to get called. For those of you, you imagine, I don't know, sending somebody a text message, hey, give me a call when you get a chance, I want to hear about blank. And then it takes a day or 4 days for them to call you. Oh my gosh, your interest level is so low. So, you see it down here in bold. It's the theme of what I've talked about. Lead generation is only effective as what you're willing to commit to a follow-up program. Back to the things I said earlier, and I'm going to come back to it, and then I'll kind of take some questions. Here are the 2 key concepts, right? Here are the 2 things that if you learn and if you understand, I promise you will be successful. Number 1, how do you quantify your franchise's funnel? How many people come in? What do we do next? 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 And where is the drop-off, right? If you find that the drop-off rate's at the top, then that's where you need to invest. If you find the drop-off rate at the bottom, that's where you invest. Pretty straightforward. And second is just real costs, right? Please don't undervalue soft costs when you're thinking about your lead follow-up program. You can't just say, I'm spending this much on leads, because if you're just buying leads and you're not investing in actually working them, then I promise you that your hard costs are not going to be as used effectively as you want. So I want you guys to keep this in mind. I definitely need to take a deep breath after going through all this, but thank you guys very much for listening. You can see my email, eli@franchisehelp.com. And I'm more than happy to kind of take any questions you guys have. Thank you.
We do have a couple questions here. We have one from Flo McDonough. She asked, what are some of the preferred strategies to go beyond the initial part of the lead follow-up conversation?
Go beyond the initial part. So and this is where, I'll have to say that our expertise is certainly not there. We want to make sure that you guys are actually getting a hold of people. After you are getting a hold of them, what the next piece of communication you're going to do, how you move them, like, okay, I want to schedule 4 phone calls, but they actually show up for all of them. Unfortunately, I'm not the guy to talk to at that point. Technology kind of takes a back seat to interpersonal communication skills, hopefully something that we're pretty good at as well, but not as applied in the franchise world. So unfortunately, we don't have the expertise there. The only thing that I say that I've told people before is just, be a good listener. If you're always just selling things and telling people they have to do this, they have to do that, you can kind of sometimes railroad the conversation in ways you don't want to. But listen to what people want, and you'll generally do okay. But unfortunately, outside my area of expertise.
All right, Eli, we have another one. It says, to date, we have used a strategy of first emailing a generic email to our leads generated by a broker. What is an appropriate amount of time to allow before we contact by phone? We want to make personal contact, but also do not want to inundate the lead. Should we call within that 21-hour period that you recommend? Perhaps they have not yet had time to review the information we sent.
So I'm going to say it over and over again. If someone's actually interested, they're interested and they're available right there. I don't think someone is going to not want to open a franchise because you called them too quickly after they submitted their contact information. So I would push back on that question in general and say, if you can send an email autoresponder and call simultaneously immediately when that lead comes in, that's my vote. You're not, there's always this question of like, won't I be bothering people? If people are actually interested and you're bothering them, they're going to email you back and tell you, oh, why don't we just schedule time at this time? They're going to call you back and say, oh, on their own schedule. What you want to avoid is the people who are interested but who lose interest very quickly. Those are the reasons you really need to have the maximum, you need to do everything immediately. So I may be a bit heartless when I say this, but I'm not, I don't care as much about waiting. Call. You're going to find the result. I will almost make a professional bet that if you ran a test and 50% of your leads you waited a day to call, and 50% of your leads you called immediately when you sent that email, I would bet quite a bit that the immediate would absolutely do better. But if you want to wait because out of respect, it's certainly not a wrong thing to do, but likely a more ineffective thing to do.
All right, Eli, one more. We are not necessarily looking for franchise leads. We are looking for network partners within Canada, as we are a landscaping company. We are looking for partners who can do the job for us. What would be the best way to reach out to them? I don't know if you can answer that, but.
I don't know. Look, when you go to the Velocify stuff, I mean, it's across all sorts of lead generation, not just franchising. This is why I want to be careful about talking about each individual brand. Every brand is going to be different. Every goal is going to be different. These are the things in your toolkit. I know whoever asked this question, whoever asked this question is likely very disappointed, and I'm not giving a better answer. But to the case that I can generalize this to you, emails are easy. They're really easy and cost effective, and they work. If you're finding emails, like I wouldn't try to do a phone lead follow-up at the cost of email. So if you can only pick one way to communicate with people, I would just make an email. I think you're going to be happy with your investment. You're going to have a lot of time to do other things. You can layer on something like CallandLee to try to actually schedule calls, but without knowing the details of kind of what you're trying to achieve, I probably can't make a recommendation more than that. But at the highest level, I guess I'd say email and hope that was a good answer, although I doubt that it is.
I mean, we do have two more that are coming in. They're just, I kind of referred back to what you asked, what you were talking about already. Yeah, he just said that calling 3 times that quickly could actually backfire and irritate a prospect. Agree? But I don't think you agree with that.
Well, let me just clarify, right? That you're looking, for those of you who are doing personalized outreach, right? That every single lead, they're already communicating with you, whatever it may be. Yes, this is important, but keep in mind, I'm focusing on this question here. How do you get in contact with people? Period. If someone responds to you and says, hey, you're going too fast, I need you to stop doing this, great, right? The next question that you ask is, well, then when are you available, right? I'll stop emailing you, I'll stop calling you, but when are you available? Although I do not recommend a contact strategy based on bothering people so much that they ultimately have to talk to you, that relative to what we hear in lead generation, right, I don't hear complaints from people that say, oh, I'm talking to people too much, it's just that we're bothering them. I've literally never heard that in the 3 years that I've been in the industry. I have heard hundreds and hundreds of times, I can't get a hold of anybody. And so I want to encourage people to not, solve the problem you actually have, which is, I'm assuming most people, I can't get a hold of anybody. If you are now getting a hold of people too much, then I guess that's my August webinar. What happens when you're getting in contact with people too much? But and it's a little flippant, and I don't mean to make light of it, but I wouldn't worry about it. put the sprint on it and worry about the repercussions later.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you so much. Oh, wait, we had another question come in.
Come on, I love them. This means people enjoyed it. I'm glad.
Are there recommendations to use to establish your company's funnel? We get tons of leads, but sometimes the gaps in our funnel allow them to fall out.
Now we're talking. So eventually, yes. Eventually, that's actually what we're building with FranFunnel, hopefully. And that's what we do. And this is our big thesis, right? And whoever that is, I encourage you to follow up with me by email, and I'd be more than happy to kind of talk about what we do. Look, data collection with regard to your franchise's funnel, the majority of people that are just starting out, they use Microsoft Excel, they update it once a day, whatever it may be. It is most important that you are collecting the data, whether or not it's correctly organized. I don't know if you're using some sort of CRM. If you're using a CRM, it's likely in there. If you find, right, so just knowing your franchise's funnel is going to allow you to locate those people who have dropped out and those people that you have accidentally let drop out, and that alone is just going to make things work. This, as far as where I would recommend that you invest your time in this, right? Give us an email, email us, call us. We love talking to people about this because we know this is when we really get to affect franchises development in a positive way. Right? When they're doing a lot of things right, but there's a few things nuanced that they're not doing correctly, and data collection can actually help with that. So I don't think there's a technical solution. We're trying to build one, like I said, that's going to make your life super easy, hopefully in this capacity. But these two things that you see on this slide about your franchise's funnel and real cost, there is not a tech solution. This is where the brain power comes in, right? This is why all of you who are listening in right now are very good at your job and you're very smart, because this is where you need to sit down and you need to do the hard thinking. You need to get the whiteboard out. You need to get Excel out. You need to get people together. You need to understand people's salaries. You need to understand flow. What are your salespeople actually doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is very difficult to do. We want to make sure that we can help in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, if it's just a conversation, we certainly do have those all the time. But this is kind of the meat. And hopefully in the future, maybe we'll talk about different franchises funnels and how they keep track of them and what they do. But for now, I'll leave it as some homework for everybody on the call to kind of focus on these things with their time at work.
I want to thank you so much, Eli, for a fantastic phone call. And if people need to, they can reach out to you at your email, correct?
Eli@franchisehealth.com. Share it with all your friends. More than happy to talk with anybody that needs help. And Franchise Health is a resource in any way, shape, or form. You don't have to buy leads from us to have a conversation. We're experts in this stuff, and more than happy to kind of keep any sort of conversation going. We want to help the franchise industry, so please just let us know.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You have a great day, and have a great day, everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.